Who's feeling like a hero? Huh?
I thought you made a resolution.
Well, New Year's ain't till midnight.
You should wear a yarmulke.
What's wrong with this?
You're a man, yet you wear the cap of a boy.
Bang, bang, bang!
Al Capone was a power-hungry bootlegger in Boardwalk Empire. He was also Johnny Torrio's muscle and right-hand man. Now, Al Capone is the first character I'm covering who actually existed in real life, and eventually I plan on making a video comparing his events on the show to what happened in real life. But in this video, we're going to be taking a look at the rise of Al Capone in Boardwalk Empire. If you enjoy content like this, like the video and subscribe to the channel for more of my videos in the future. I would really appreciate it. But it's your boy Evan loud and clear. I want to thank you all for being here. Let's get into it. The beginning of Al Capone's story in the show isn't as chaotic as some might think it is. I mean, yeah, there's the robbery with Jimmy, the killing of Charlie Sheridan, and of course, my personal favorite.
I'm making a statement.
But in the first season, I feel like we see Capone's journey from boy to man. There was a few times where Al showed immaturity and a lack of leadership. He mishandled the dealings with Charlie Sheridan the first time around, which led to Torrio reminding him that he's not the man yet, and all he does is drive and wash his car. Then there was the time Torrio was having a meeting, and Al thought it would be funny to give him a cigarette from the joke shop. Torrio didn't find it so funny, and most definitely made it known by saying this to Al.
This ain't no f***ing grade school.
That was letting Al know that he wasn't acting how a man in his position should be acting. Al Capone found out what he had to do to be the man he needed to be at a bar mitzvah. It was in this synagogue where he starts speaking to a Jewish man. The Jewish man tells Al to keep his hat on inside as it's a sign of respect. The Jewish man also tells Al that he should get a new hat. When Al asks why, the man replies, "You're a man, yet you wear the hat of a boy." Now, he doesn't say this in an insulting or demeaning kind of way. He says it like he looks at Al and he sees a man and he expects him to look like one. Kind of like how Torrio expects him to act like one as well. We can really see Al self-reflecting in this moment, and it's one of the moments where he becomes the Al Capone we see in the rest of the show. That visit to the synagogue led Al to go get a new hat and to confront Torrio. He apologized for all the bullshit, and he said he was ready to take responsibilities for his actions as a man. We see a bit of a change in his demeanor at the peace meeting between Rothstein and Nucky. This time, Luciano said something out of line, and Al told him to stop making jokes. Now, we most definitely still see Al do some pretty crazy things later on in the show, but this was a big step for his character. But before we move on, I would like to talk about the relationship between Al Capone and Jimmy Darmody. I think Jimmy and Al were very similar, them both being young upcomers, them both being in the war, and most of all, them both being fathers. Al could relate with Jimmy in a way he couldn't relate with anyone else. They were both criminals with sons, and let's not forget, it was Jimmy who initially made the discovery that Al Capone's son was deaf. But as far as work went, yeah, it was pretty uneasy at first. You got a feeling like there was a little bit of a competition for Torrio's trust, more so on Al's part. When Torrio was praising Jimmy after the killing of Charlie Sheridan, we could see Al rolling his eyes, thinking maybe Jimmy didn't deserve all the credit he was getting. And I believe that's why Al started making jokes about Jimmy. Jimmy responded with insults of his own, and after that, we really didn't know what way the relationship was going to go. Jimmy was a little unsure himself, so when Al came to see him later, Jimmy pulled a gun on him. Al revealed that he brought Jimmy steaks because Jimmy said he liked him the first time they met. They talked about how they were accomplices who turned friends, and Al confided in Jimmy about his son. Al told Jimmy that he sings and plays the mandolin for his son, but he can't hear it. In this scene, we can really see how much Al cares for his boy and how much he believes he's at fault for his condition. I really don't think Al would have had a conversation like that with anyone besides Jimmy. But get in the comment section and let me know what y'all think about the relationship between Al Capone and Jimmy Darmody. The next time we see Al, he's at a meeting with Torrio and George Remus. At this meeting, Torrio agrees to start buying liquor from Remus. Because of this, Al stops in Atlantic City to see Nucky. He lets Nucky know that Torrio won't be buying booze from him anymore. But that wasn't the best part of Al's trip to AC. He ends up stopping at Jimmy's house. They start talking about how far they've come since they last saw each other. Al tells Jimmy that Torrio gave him a piece of a few casinos and other enterprises as well. Jimmy proceeded to tell Al that he was planning on sending Nucky to jail and taking over AC. Now, it was as early as this moment that Al recommended that Jimmy kill Nucky. To be exact,
Just have Frankenstein drill a hole in his noggin.
and I gotta say, y'all, this was probably the stare down of the series right here. And with that being said, y'all know how I am about these fictional characters squaring up. So let me know in the comments who y'all think would win in the fight, Richard Harrow or Al Capone. While planning to take over AC, Jimmy hosted a meeting with Luciano, Meyer, Richard, Mickey, Eli, and Al. Al suggested once again that Jimmy has Nucky killed. So the plan was Al was going to get a hitman from Chicago to come and kill Nucky. But obviously the plan didn't work, as Nucky survived. Being that Nucky survived, Jimmy was very upset and called Al to complain. Al once again told Jimmy that this wouldn't have happened if he killed Nucky months ago like he suggested. Right after Al hangs up with Jimmy, Torrio rolls up on him. Man, Johnny was sneaky like that, y'all. He really was. He rolled right up on him, and Al was kind of shook. Al told Torrio he was on the phone with Jimmy, and Johnny just knows that he's up to something. Then Torrio warns Al to leave him out of whatever him and the rest of the younger guys got going on. The younger guys wouldn't have much going on for long. Jimmy eventually was killed, so Al, Luciano, and Lansky went their separate ways. I'll talk more about it in detail in my video about the Darmodys, so go check that out when you're done watching this. One of Al's biggest rivals in the series was a guy named Dean O'Banion. Torrio called a meeting with O'Banion to settle a turf dispute. The meeting did not go well, to say the least. O'Banion mocked Al Capone's son for being deaf, and Al went after him, but was held back by Torrio and others. Johnny was going to Naples for the new year, and he told Al that he didn't want a war while he was gone, and Al assured him that peace would be his New Year's resolution. But we all knew that Al was going to get his get back. Later that night, Al went to see Dino at his flower shop. Al was most definitely about to smack him around, but right before that could happen, Nelson Van Alden walked in trying to sell Dino irons. And if y'all want to hear the story about how Nelson Van Alden, the prohibition officer, got here, please go check out my video about him. I promise you will not be disappointed. O'Banion pretends that Van Alden is his muscle and that he's got some sort of weapon in his suitcase. Van Alden actually plays along very well, and Al decides to leave, but that wouldn't be the end of the Capone-O'Banion beef. Now, we all remember Al Capone's buddy Jake, right? He made collections for Johnny Torrio and had been working with Al for a while. Jake was making collections one day when he ran into a guy named Joe Miller who worked for Dean O'Banion. Joe proceeded to insult Jake about his weight and his smell before beating the bricks off him, which was a mistake. Al returned to the bar with a vengeance, and Al didn't just beat the bricks off Miller, he ended up killing the guy, which was the kind of event he told Torrio wouldn't happen. But I think there's a deeper reason as to why Al reacted the way he did when he heard about what happened to Jake. Earlier in the same episode, Al found out his son got beat up and was being bullied at school. He tried to teach his son how to defend himself, but he only brought his son to tears. Al must have been enraged that he couldn't do anything about his son being bullied. Well, with Jake, that was a situation where he could do something, and he did. When Torrio returned from Naples, Al informed him about what happened with Joe Miller. Johnny didn't really seem too happy or too upset about it. I guess he trusted that Al did what he thought was right and assured Al that they would clear things up with Dean. The day they meet with O'Banion, we see Van Alden with him, and Dino introduces him as his new muscle. Long story short, Torrio talks about Pompeii, and Al and Dean, I guess they seem to settle their dispute. Now, Nelson Van Alden, turned George Mueller, was distilling whiskey for Dean O'Banion and selling some on the side. Unfortunately for him, the territory he was selling in belonged to Al Capone. Capone told Nelson to tell him everything he knew about O'Banion's operation and to keep giving him information in the future. Now, for the better part of season 3, Gyp Rossetti and Nucky Thompson were at war. Eli ended up making a deal with Al Capone for extra muscle in the war. We see Al and Chalky's crews fighting frequently, and Chalky and Al almost got into it as well. I asked this in my video about Chalky White, and I've gotten some pretty good answers so far. So with that being said, who do y'all think would have won a fight, Al Capone or Chalky White? Man, Al was scrapping with everybody. I've had to ask that question like 3 times. I think I gotta ask it a few more. Who knows, man? But let's keep going. I talk about the war in detail in my video about Gyp Rossetti, so if y'all want to hear that story, check that video out after this. Long story short, Chalky and Al Capone got to kill a bunch of Masseria's men together, and they actually left on good terms. With Al taking on more responsibilities, he brought his brothers Frank and Ralph out to Chicago. I gotta say, y'all, I really enjoyed scenes with the Capone brothers. I thought they were a great presence on the show, especially the relationship between Frank and Van Alden. Frank saved Van Alden from Al on multiple occasions. Frank was a much more level-headed version of Al, and he saw what Van Alden could be good for. Van Alden proved himself to Frank by taking a chair to the face when they broke up a Democratic voters rally. Frank knew Van Alden was durable, so he brought him along when him and Al went and did Jake's pickups. Van Alden spent the entire day with Al and Frank, and at the end, they stole one of Dean O'Banion's flour trucks that had one of his men inside. They tried to make Van Alden kill him, but the gun jammed, and then Al lit this dude up. And I believe it was at this moment when Van Alden realized that he should probably side with the Capones. On the Capones' next errand, they went down to the voting yard to prevent people from voting Democrat. The bad thing is, they were facing,
A numerically disadvantaged situation.
What?
Yeah, basically they were outnumbered at least 3-1. I think it's fair to say that if Al just kept his mouth shut and let Frank do the talking, maybe they could have talked their way towards a few more minutes. That way their backup would have arrived in time to even out the numbers. But that's not what happened, and an all-out brawl broke out. In the end, the cops showed up and opened fire on Frank, killing him. Obviously, Al was enraged, and he literally walked up to a cop in broad daylight and shot him in the face, which brought heat to him and, by association, Torrio. Torrio brought Al in to see him and asked him if he was responsible for killing the cop, and Al replies with this.
Jeez, another one?
And that means that this wasn't the first cop Al's killed since they killed Frank. Al was positive O'Banion had something to do with it, but Torrio told Al not to touch him as he had business with Dino. Torrio had a deal with O'Banion. Considering O'Banion helped Torrio and Al gain power in Cicero, Johnny was going to purchase a brewery from O'Banion, a brewery that he didn't really need. At the brewery, when O'Banion was signing over ownership to Torrio, the cops raided the place and arrested both of them. However, Dino got off with the charges being dropped, and because of this, Torrio gave Al an order that Al has been waiting for a long time. Al surprisingly gave the task of killing O'Banion to Van Alden. Van Alden made an attempt, but his past caught up to him and he was unable to kill Dino. Later that night, Van Alden made sure Dean was alone at his flower shop, and some guys came in and killed Dean. So Van Alden was now a full-blown soldier for Al Capone, and the Capone-O'Banion beef was finally over. With Dino out of the way, his territory was up for grabs, and Al didn't hesitate to swoop in and take it. Al assigned Van Alden to do Ralph's old pickups, and Al moved Ralph up so he could be more hands-on with the distribution. He thought Johnny would like the idea of being able to relax a bit more, but Johnny was less than thrilled. Al insisted he wasn't trying to squeeze Torrio out, and all in all, it was a very uneasy conversation between the two. A few days later, Johnny is at Al's office, but he leaves, and about 2 minutes after that, the place is shot up. Now, there's a bunch of different opinions about if Johnny Torrio tried to have Al Capone killed and if Al retaliated, which we'll get to soon enough. But as far as Johnny trying to have Al killed, I most definitely think it was him. But let's talk about it. When it comes to suspects at the time, 3 come to mind. One is Jaime Weiss, because it would be retaliation for Dean O'Banion. 2 is Nelson Van Alden, because, Al has smacked him around, stuck a gun in his face multiple times, insulted him, and let's not forget, Nelson almost shot Al in the back during the riot where Frank got killed. And number 3 would be Johnny Torrio. Johnny would want Al dead because Al posed a threat for Torrio's position as boss. Also, Al was gaining a lot of notoriety in the streets and in the press, and Torrio didn't like that. So, let's check them all out. I don't think it would be Jaime Weiss, because like Van Alden said, it would had to have been someone who was comfortable coming into his territory, and I don't think Jaime was, so that crosses him out. It wasn't Nelson Van Alden because he almost died his damn self. He actually saved Al from getting shot. We can cross him off. Which leaves Johnny. Johnny would obviously be comfortable in Al's territory because technically it's his territory as well. And the caller said that whatever Al needed to answer the phone for was important, which made Al go to the phone in the room closest to where the shooters were. Now, who would know exactly what phone Al would use to make or take his so-called important calls? Maybe the guy who just walked out of the room a minute prior to the shooting. But get in the comment section and let me know who y'all think put the hit out on Al Capone. Now, on the contrary, the hit on Torrio was a bit more obvious. There's not a doubt in my mind that it was Al. And even though the hit was unsuccessful, Torrio got the message and handed the entire operation over to Al. In the final season, Al is a full-blown celebrity criminal. He's known worldwide, he's having a movie made about him. Everything he's ever wanted from this lifestyle, he's pretty much got. Bad thing is, he's also got a snitch in his crew. This guy called Mike D'Angelo was actually a Fed, and it wouldn't be long before he figured out a way to bring down Al's operation. Lucky Luciano was in town visiting Al Capone, trying to organize all the families, and he recognized Van Alden from seeing him in AC. Van Alden was called into Al's office and once again found himself at gunpoint. Somehow, this man talked his way out of getting killed, but it got the attention of D'Angelo, and he came up with a plan of his own. He confronted Van Alden and Eli, letting them know that he knew their real identities. D'Angelo told them to sneak into Al's office and take the ledgers, which was a mistake. When they went in, they found Ralph having a good time, let's say. When confronted about it, Nelson went after Al, only to be shot and killed by D'Angelo. What this did was allow Al to trust D'Angelo, and D'Angelo was ironically given the ledgers to bring over to Cicero until things cooled down. Now, with the ledgers in his possession, he had what he needed to arrest Al Capone for tax evasion and bring an end to his reign in Chicago. Now, before I say anything else, I believe Stephen Graham absolutely killed this role. Al was one of the more underrated characters in the show, in my opinion, and Stephen Graham gave us a hell of a performance. Unfortunately, it's time to wrap this one up. I've really been enjoying making these Boardwalk videos, and I'm hyped about the feedback I've been getting from y'all. I got some ideas about what my next video should be, but get in the comments and let me know who or what you would like to see a video about next. But if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more of my videos in the future. I would really appreciate it. But it's your boy Evan Loud and Clear. I'm out of here.